Our story continues. Now after they being the wise men had left, an angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream and said, "Get up, take the child and his mother and flee to Egypt and remain there until I tell you. For Herod is about to search for the child and to destroy him." Then Joseph got up, took the child and his mother by night and went to Egypt and remained there until the death of Herod. This was to fulfill what had been spoken by the Lord through the prophet, "Out of Egypt I have called my son." Now when Herod saw that he had been tricked by the wise men, he was infuriated, and he sent and he killed all the children to and around Bethlehem who were 2 years old or younger, according to the time that he had learned from the wise men. Then was fulfilled what had been spoken through the prophet Jeremiah. A voice was heard in Ramah, wailing and loud lamentation, Rachel weeping for her children, and she refused to be consoled because there were no more. Now when Herod died, an angel of the Lord suddenly appeared in a dream to Joseph in Egypt and said, "Get up, take the child and his mother and go to the land of Israel, for those who were seeking the child's life are dead." Then Joseph got up, he took the child and his mother and went to the land of Israel. But when he heard that Archelaus was ruling over Judea in place of his father Herod, he was afraid to go there. And after being warned in a dream, he went away to the district of Galilee. There he made his home in a town called Nazareth, so that what had been spoken through the prophet might be fulfilled, and he will be called a Nazarene. I've realized I have finally gotten to that age that I swore I was never going to get to, when I can begin something saying, "I remember when I was a child." I used to hear that, and sometimes I would just sort of blank over. But I remember when I was a child, the excitement of the Christmas season, because this was the day before you could watch any show that you wanted, any time you wanted, with over 1,000 channels. It was a day that you had to get something like the TV Guide to figure out when your very favorite Christmas show was going to be on. Now, you don't have to answer this aloud, but I don't know if any of you had a favorite thing that came on around Christmas, whether it was The Wizard of Oz or Frosty the Snowman or Peanuts Christmas. Charlie Brown Christmas always seemed to be particularly popular with folks. I had one that was a little different. It was made in 1968. So I was only 3 when I probably saw it for the very first time. It was a little drummer boy. Now, in the story that I've read and in the nativity scene that we have over here, do you see the little drummer boy anywhere? Do any of you remember seeing the little drummer boy? Now, this is where you can raise your hand if you want to. Did any of you enjoy the story of the little drummer boy? Do any of you not have a clue what I'm talking about? To recap the story of the little drummer boy, it takes place in this same wonderful procession and journey of the Magi, as they are making their way from lands east, following a star and seeking the Christ child. Along the way, a young boy whose family has recently been no more, who has given up on humanity because of the awful things that he has seen and experienced. He sort of is brought into slavery and in bondage and sold back and forth, and eventually ends up with this caravan traveling. Long story short, this young man who has looked around the world and has experienced great tragedy and horror and thinks there is nothing good in the world anymore, follows behind the Magi to the manger. And at the manger experiences the beauty of the infant, God's glory known in Jesus. Now, this young man has only found solace in one thing, which was a small snare drum that had been given to him when he was a small child. But as he's watching these magi, as he's watching these kings give these luxurious presents, he feels so ill-equipped. He has nothing to offer. He is poor. He has nothing. And by the end, he realizes the one thing that he can give is to play on his drum for the Christ child. That story resonated with me as a young child, not because I have any musical ability whatsoever, but because oftentimes I think even at a young age, and let's be honest, even to this age, there are times that I feel like I'm not sure what I have to offer. And what resonates truly and deeply with me is that each and every one of us, no matter what we have seen in the world around us, can experience the love of Christ, and each of us has something to share and to give. We said that the drummer boy is not in our nativity scene. I've never seen him in any nativity scene. Does that mean the story of the little drummer boy then is not true? It means it's not factual. It means it probably didn't occur. Somebody, in relation to hearing the birth story, found something to connect with, and the little drummer boy was born. And for some of us, that story resonates as something true. Matthew did the very same thing years later as he looks at the birth narrative of Jesus the Christ. And as he sets Jesus up to be in the same role as his modern-day Moses. We've learned some things in history about Herod. Herod actually was quite an evil and cruel man by the end of his reign. Was there the slaughter of the innocents that we hear in our scripture passage? Nothing tells us that actually occurred. But we do know that as he ruled that land, he was an awfully cruel leader. He was one who was so enmeshed with power and wealth at the expense of others. We learned that Herod, towards the end, started to go a little bit insane, executing members of his own family out of delusions of fear. The other thing that we take from the passage from this gospel is that this ruler is not, this kind of ruler is not the one the world needs. The kind of ruler, the kind to show us the way, was the exact opposite. It was an infant born on the margins of society. It was a child who would grow to still be on the margins of society, calling, beckoning the world back to God and God's ways. A child that would need to flee his own country of birth out of fear of violence and murder. A child who would cross borders in order to be safe. A child and family needing to escape oppression. I'm not going to go political this morning. I'll invite you to draw your own comparisons in the world around us today. But the decision is one for us to each make.
who we choose to follow. Do we choose to follow those of great wealth and power and domination? Or rather, do we seek a way to God that does not involve those things, but instead involves a humbleness and a meekness and a willingness to be vulnerable, a willingness to seek Christ in the most unexpected places?